solar electricity generating facility, a clean energy manufacturing facility that manufactures products and equipment for renewable energy generation, energy efficiency, or clean alternative fuels, or a project that is in an infill area and that meets the LEED Silver standard. The project can be a retail, commercial, sports, entertainment, cultural, or recreational establishment, just about anything except industrial. It requires any qualifying project to result in at least $100 million in investment in California. It requires that the developers pay prevailing wage or a living wage. It requires that the project be carbon neutral regarding vehicle trips to the project. It requires a complete EIR and CEQA process and fully implements all mitigation measures required by the project EIR. It requires the developer to pay the cost of the court in the hearing case, including the cost of a special master and preparation of the administrative record. It authorizes the governor to certify projects that meet all the criteria above. The governor's decisions are not subject to judicial review. It requires that all projects approved by the governor be submitted to the Joint Legislative Budget Committee for the committee's concurrence or non-concurrence. If the JLBC doesn't act in 30 days, the project is deemed certified. Project applicants must apply to be a leadership project before their draft EIR is issued, and the project's final EIR must be certified before June 1, 2014. It requires the Judicial Council to report to the legislature by January 1, 2015 to describe the benefits, costs, and detriments of the process. It sunsets on January 1, 2015. Essentially what we're creating is a pilot project that will allow those developments that are willing to commit to high standards to have an expedited judicial review process. There's no circumvention of the EIR process, and hopefully this will result in projects that meet high environmental standards that can be completed on in a more expeditious manner, and will put people in California back to work earning good wages. With me are Assemblymember Gordon and President Pro Tem Darrell Steinberg. Yeah, what you call it. Thank you.
Would either Assemblymember Gordon or Senator whatchamacallit like to comment on the motion?
Go ahead, Mr. Gordon. Let me be very, very brief. My colleague has adequately described what this bill does. Let me just reiterate what it does not do. It does not eliminate the EIR process. The EIR process at the local level continues to unfold with full opportunity for local communities to have input, to discuss mitigations, and to refine the project. All this bill simply does is for those qualified projects, as certified by the governor or by the legislature, to have an access to an expedited judicial review. It's that simple.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'll make brief comments. It's important, I think, to reiterate sort of the obvious as to why this bill is important, why it's important to do now, as opposed to waiting for another year. People are hurting. California has a 12% unemployment rate. The unemployment rate in the trades, in the building trades, is higher. Yesterday, this committee approved a major bill to help expedite the potential construction of a project in downtown Los Angeles. I support that because I think it's the right thing. If it's right to help jumpstart development in downtown Los Angeles for a very important project, why isn't it right for every other region of the state that is living with the same economic conditions? There are significant benefits to this bill. Without undermining a bit of California's landmark environmental quality law, this bill could, in appropriate cases, cut 2 to 3 years worth of time involved in any litigation around CEQA, and a major project. And so when you consider all the benefits, and that is an undeniable benefit, I think then the committee should ask itself the other question. What is the harm? Where is the harm here? I can't find it. Original jurisdiction in the appellate court with the provision for a special master to be able to do all the necessary fact-finding. Even for a individual or a community group that is contesting the adequacy of a CEQA document, the expense that goes into maintaining 2 levels or 3 levels of litigation, they benefit because you only have 1 level of litigation. It's streamlining. And in this economic time, if we can cut 2.5 to 3 years off of the timeline for a lawsuit to finish, so long as we're not undermining a single substantive right, I think it's our obligation to take what the committee did yesterday and expand it so that more people can get back to work. I urge and I vote.
Do you have witnesses in support?
Yes.
Could I get a rough show of hands on how many witnesses in support there are, please? All right, thank you. Why don't you come forward and members, if you're agreeable, I think I'd like to do what we did yesterday, which is say, let's allow for up to 10 minutes total for witnesses in support. Doesn't mean you have to use it all, obviously. And then also up to 10 minutes total for witnesses in opposition. And we'll ask the witnesses to try and sort that out a little bit amongst themselves, if they may. Good morning, welcome, and please introduce yourself to the committee.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members. Cesar Diaz on behalf of the State Building and Construction Trades Council. We'd like to thank the Senate Pro Tem for working with us and getting to a support position on this bill. Obviously, we do not support bills that weaken CEQA. However, this bill does not do that. It protects the integrity of the CEQA process, but also will help create much-needed jobs in the building and construction trades, as was mentioned by the Pro Tem. For those reasons, we strongly support the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Could we have our next witness, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Angie Way on behalf of the California Labor Federation. Our members and workers across this state are living in extraordinarily rough times. Extraordinary times call for extraordinary measures, and this is what this bill does, even though substantively we don't think it's that extraordinary. We are fierce defenders of the CEQA process and of our environmental protections in California, and we will continue to be fierce defenders. This bill simply takes it to the expedited process and kicks the jurisdiction to the appellate level. We need these jobs, and we hope that we need them yesterday. We hope that this bill will help deliver them. We support.
Thank you. Next witness.
Mr. Chair, Committee, Rusty Hicks with the LA County Federation of Labor. We represent 800,000 working men and women across LA County from every sector, every industry. The statewide average, as the Pro Tem spoke to, is 12% for unemployment. In LA County, it's as high as 14%, and in some particular communities, over 20%. This provides an opportunity to get folks back to work and get them back to work now. So we ask for your vote.
Thank you again, Rusty. Any other witnesses in support, please?
Mr. Chair and members, Tim Schott on behalf of the San Francisco Bay Area Rapid Transit District. We do not have an official position on the bill. We wanted to raise one interest, and that is that we would have, of course, preferred to see the bill also address transit projects. We believe those are consistent with assuring that we have projects that are beneficial to our environment. But at the least, we would ask you to consider adding mixed use into those lists of commercial, residential, et cetera, just to make it crystal clear that transit-oriented development projects could, in fact, qualify for application. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments today. Next witness.
Thank you, Chairman. Melissa Cortez Roth on behalf of the California Wind Energy Association. We actually have a supportive amended position on the bill. To be eligible for the expedited judicial review under this bill, you must elect to proceed before the release of the draft EIR. However, most of our projects that need to be operational before the expiration already have draft EIRs out. So for this to have a real meaningful impact on renewable projects, we would ask that the bill be amended instead of the release of the draft EIR to the certification of the EIR. That way, more projects would be eligible and it would have further impact on jobs. Thank you.
Next witness. Thank you.
Mr. Chair and members, Don Gilbert, representing TerraGen Power, large renewable developer in the state. I want to echo Ms. Cortez's testimony. That's the exact circumstance we're in. We would also appreciate such an amendment. Thank you.
Chairman, members, John Norwood on behalf of Comcast, NBC, Universal. Our position would be support if amended, and in fact support enthusiastically. If this bill could be amended to provide that projects that have already begun the EIR process could opt into this legislation. We commend the authors and everybody for the attempt on to expedite projects, but the problem with this bill is that it's not likely to produce new jobs and new revenue to the state fund for several years to come, because the projects that are closest to be ready to go, can't take advantage of the provisions of the bill. NBC Universal has a studio lot remodel project in Los Angeles that is estimated economic benefit of $3.5 billion, over 30,000 construction jobs and 12,000 ongoing jobs. And, we cannot take, because of the way this bill is drafted, we cannot take advantage of it. I would just say I totally agree with the pro tem that, if it's the right thing to do to jumpstart one project in LA that'll create jobs, then it's the right thing to do to jumpstart another project like this and others similarly suited. I think between the stadium proposal and the NBCU proposal would create over 40,000 jobs in LA that would address the issues raised by labor here and the high unemployment in LA Basin. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Witness.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members. Victoria Rome with Natural Resources Defense Council. We also don't have an official position. I just wanted to say we'd be willing to work on this policy, but our staff are engaged in numerous projects around the state, and we just haven't had time to analyze the impacts of a bill like this on all the projects that we may be involved with. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair and members, Matthew Hart with the California Business Properties Association. The last time I was in front of this committee, we were the sponsors of a bill that aimed to do the similar things as this bill. We want to get there to support this bill, but I come here today to point out that you have a process paradox in this bill in terms of the retail projects. In order to get to the point where you get the CEQA benefits out of this bill, you have the bill says you have to be LEED certified. You can't be LEED certified until you get towards the end of the project. We would suggest that the committee look at using California's strongest building codes in the nation and change that language to be Cal Green Tier 1 or even Tier 2 if you want to get to very, very high standards. That keeps this bill within the state codes, keeps the process with the governor's office and OPR, and doesn't cede the state's authority to a third-party private entity. Thank you.
Thank you. Next witness. Any other witnesses in support? Are there witnesses in opposition? If there are, please come forward.
Good morning. Michael Endicott with Sierra Club, California. I'll try to keep it brief because there are a bunch of people that happen to be here from the local communities that are affected that aren't ordinarily here because they don't have their own hired guns. But I do want to say a couple of things. First of all, CEQA, while often viewed or held up as being impediments to projects and jumpstarting the economy, is not the problem. What projects need to get going is private financing and other private business decisions that are not in control of this legislature. We saw with the City of Industry where we directly interfered.
Mr. Endicott, your enthusiasm is contagious, but if you could lower the volume just a bit, please.
Thank you. All right. The City of Industry showed that 2 years later, we still have no stadium, no team, and no jobs. This bill here takes what was going to be language crafted for a single project and now vastly expands it so quickly that nobody here has time to look at it. You heard several suggestions about how it should be amended, it should be tweaked. I want to address two quick questions that relate to this that were raised last night, though. It is not the same thing if you shorten the time frame so drastically to say that just because you've collected the record, or you can have a simultaneous mediation process for community groups who do not have their own lawyers that are there from the very beginning of the project, all the way through to be able to handle that record in this tight time frame. So while project proponents might say, sure, we can actually prepare a brief in just 2 months, that's an impossible burden maybe for environmental groups, unless you have a way of providing them with funds to have their own representative there from the very beginning. They can't have somebody on retainer. You just heard NRDC saying we don't have enough people here to look at this bill enough to take a position. So to shorten this down again, we all are in favor of jobs. Our people live in these same communities, but they are also the same ones that feel the impacts if we weaken CEQA, either procedurally or substantively, and make it impossible to carry out the way to enforce it if something goes wrong, because those impacts will happen for decades to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Next witness.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. Mark Christian with the American Institute of Architects California Council. Reluctantly, we must oppose this bill because of the point that Matt Hardgrove brought up, linking the retail infill projects, residential projects, to LEED Silver. As Matt said, CEQA is a pre-development process. LEED is a post-occupancy process, certification. When LEED 3.0 comes out, it could be a year, 2 years post-occupancy before their certification. So we see it's difficult to link those two. Additionally, LEED is a private certification program. It is not adopted following open meetings laws, open process. It is a private entity, and this would place into statute a private criteria that the public does not have a right to participate in. We would recommend that Cal Green Tier 1 or Tier 2 be used instead. That is a building code. It's a building standard. It's adopted in California using an open process that allows the public to participate in. We don't see how the LEED standard will work. We believe that Cal Green will work. We oppose unless Cal Green is used. Thank you.
Next witness, please.
Good morning. My name is Jesse Marquez. I was born and raised in Los Angeles all my life, so I am a Wilmington resident. Number one, the public opposes any last-minute gut and amend bills for anything due to the fact it leaves out public participation and review. We believe that the current CEQA application and procedures are adequate to address all projects with no exceptions. What you're proposing bypasses existing laws that prohibit unequal application of the law and legal due process denial, suppression, and participation by the public. It denies local communities and residents and organizations to prepare adequate appeal legal challenge due to the shortened court processing time. I personally, as a resident, filed a lawsuit against the City of LA and the Port of Los Angeles, and it was 50,000 pages in the administrative record. It was a 6,000-page EIR. There's no way in 40 days I could prepare a legal brief or any community organization. It took a whole team of us trying our best. And what ended up, we did not go to court. The Port in Los Angeles had a community benefits agreement that we all agreed on, and the project moved forward. That's how we accomplished that. The only reason there has been problems in the past with EIRs is due to the fact the project sponsor, the hired consultants, and the lead agency failed to prepare an adequate EIR that addressed all concerns. And that's what led to legal challenges and delays. Prepare them right the first time, then there are no problems. If this project is so great and so clean, there will be no need for offset credits. Just as a point of information, you referenced the South Coast AQMD. The South Coast AQMD was found guilty in court just in the last 2 years of fictitiously creating offset credits. We have no confidence in our government lead agencies in terms of anything with credits, and we oppose offset credits. In terms of your 10% standard to comparable projects, we do not want it to comparable projects. We want it comparable to the best projects. And one example of the best project is Seattle. That's what it should be compared to, the top three.
If I could ask you to wrap up your remarks because we have a number of witnesses.
Okay, it also does not mandate any zero emissions transportation technologies or maximum achievable control technologies, and it does not require a health impact assessment, which we do support. in addition to a health risk assessment. Thank you.
Thank you. Next witness, please.
Mr. Chairman, members, Mark Palicki, Sierra Pacific Industries. We'd like to support this bill. It's the kind of thing that we think will get jobs back into California. However, we're opposed unless amended. Similar to some of the other witnesses, the LEED standard is something we oppose. LEED, for very complex reasons, discriminates against wood products, number one. Number two, it discriminates against wood products manufactured in California to the benefit of wood products imported from other states and other countries. Number two, this excludes biomass power plants. And, with our wood processing facilities, we also have biomass power plants. It's to the benefit of wind and solar, which are fine, but we would like to see biomass power plants included as well, because the Air Resources Board, for example, has determined that they're already carbon neutral. So why wouldn't they qualify as well? Third, the $100 million threshold might apply to very large projects in the desert or something, but a biomass power plant might cost $40 million to build or something. We'd like to see that threshold lowered. And we have a similar concern that others had about the introduction of the EIR having to go first. We've already, for example, we're building a power plant, a $40 million plant in Anderson power plant that we've already submitted the draft EIR, so this wouldn't qualify. So an amendment there would be helpful as well. So as I said, we would appreciate some consideration of those comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Next witness.
Hi, Jenna Price on behalf of the Planning and Conservation League. While we do have many concerns that were echoed by our colleagues before us, I'm here to speak purely on the process. Bottom line is the process is flawed. AB 900 is in print today. It's the last day of session. This is a project, the project of this magnitude, proposal of this magnitude, seriously does not have the time it deserves to be reviewed on the last day of session. As Michael Endicott stated before from the Sierra Club, 2 years ago, we granted a legislative exemption from judicial review for the City of Industry. Ground has not been broken. No jobs have been created. If we really want to do this, we need to allow proper time for review. We are further hacking away at what CEQA stands to put in place, which is to protect the environment and the health and well-being of the people most affected by the projects. Thank you.
Thank you. Next witness.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Kathy Lynch, representing the American Forest and Paper Association and the American Wood Council. And we, too, have just started to review this bill. We would like to also support it. It has some very good components in it. However, the LEED certification is very troubling. We have worked with the legislature and with the Building Standards Commission for a number of years now to try to make sure that there's a level playing field for all materials and products. There are numerous certification programs other than the LEED standard, and it is a third-party certification, and it basically adopts and changes. It's under review right now, and the legislature would have no oversight over those changes. I'm pleased that one of the members of your committee, Senator Hancock, we did work with on her bill. She had a LEED standard and was amenable to changing that to be more encompassing of all the certification programs, and we encourage you to do that here. Thank you.
Next witness, and folks, please try and be brief. We're pushing up against our time limits.
Mr. Chairman and members, Tim Shustak with the American Chemistry Council. I'll be brief. Support the comments made by Ms. Lynch and others regarding the LEED standard. We encourage the bill to include a reference to the state's own green building standard, the Cal Green Code. Thank you.
Julie Malinowski-Ball on behalf of the California Biomass Energy Alliance. We actually agree with everything the author said about why we would like this bill. We think it also should be technology neutral for renewables. You know, biomass power, as Mark Palicki suggested a little earlier, this is a carbon neutral technology, and local governments rely on these facilities in their regions for their clean air goals. If it's good for wind and solar, it should be good for biomass, and we would appreciate that. Thanks.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Chris Walker on behalf of the California Association of Sheet Metal Air Conditioning Contractors. We have no position on the bill. We want to raise one practical concern with regards to the LEED standard. We agree it should be on the green, Cal Green Tier 1 instead of LEED. And let me just give you one example why. It conflicts with, it's inconsistent. LEED conflicts with and is inconsistent with Title 24, the California Energy Commission Energy Efficiency Codes. As HVAC contractors, we are to design under
Title 24, systems that are diverse in diversification of design, which means our HVAC systems are no longer built to the maximum capacity load of a building. It's more built to what the normal average use of the building would be, while LEED requires us to do a system purge or a system flush out before the building is occupied, which is to maintain a certain airflow, certain temperature, certain humidity levels. We cannot do that with the systems we installed per Title 24 because they're not strong enough. We also have another example where LEED requires us for points to procure materials and goods within a 500-mile radius. Because of Title 24 and the new exotic materials and devices that we're asked to install.
Quickly, please.
Okay. We cannot meet the LEED standard following Title 24.
Next witness.
Mr. Chair and members, Scott Governor, on behalf of the Construction Employers Association, we have no position on the will, but we will associate ourselves with Mr. Walker's comments about LEED.
Thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, members, Dave Ackerman representing the Associated General Contractors. I'll echo the LEED's comments as well. Our contractors are LEED certified, and we do have a concern with the way the bill's written on the LEED standards and hope that can be addressed to make it work. I just have one question, if I might, just for the author that hasn't been mentioned at all.
Sir, I'd like to ask you to direct your question.
Can I direct the question to the chair? I will direct the question to the chair. There's been no discussion. I believe this bill deals only with private works and only with projects that are either privately financed or financed by monies generated through the project itself. So no public funds are involved. Am I correct on that?
Clarify that as we go forward. Thank you.
And the question about that is prevailing wage seems to be required on all those jobs, and I don't think anywhere in statute is prevailing wage required on private works, unless it's a redevelopment project that includes.
I'm going to say thank you for your question. I'm going to point out that and I'm going to look to the authors to correct me if I'm wrong, but for all of the folks who are complaining about we don't want to do this and we don't want to do that, you don't have to do any of it. You have to do it if you want to avail yourself of the expedited review that's in the bill. But I think people need to be mindful of the fact these are not requirements, these are opportunities. Senator Steinberg, is that a fair characterization of the bill?
That's very fair.
Right.
Exactly.
Thank you very
I understand
much.
that, Mr. Chair.
Next
Thank
witness.
Good morning. My name is Martelina Arguello with Physicians for Social Responsibility in Los Angeles. We've not had a lot of time to analyze this bill. One of the concerns that we have, that my organization has, is that there won't be adequate time for community organizations to not only respond to the legal documents, but also to organize around what are the benefits that they want to gain from such projects. So for us in the inner city, downtown Los Angeles, infill is code for displacement and gentrification. So we're deeply concerned. While we want green projects, we also want to make sure that neighborhoods are stabilized and folks aren't priced out of their homes. These kind of high-end developments will mean that low-income folks will not have access to those same neighborhoods, and that is one of our big concerns with projects like this. Thank you.
Thank you. Next witness. And folks, please, if it's been said, just reassociate yourself.
Good morning. Rabina Sewell from California Safe Schools. And we're already extremely challenged about projects coming in next to schools. And so, we're not quite sure how this is going to play out. And so the hope is that challenging the way that, that we access or enforcement when things go wrong creates too much of a hurdle with this new process. And so we ask you to please say no. Thank you.
Thank you.
Shabaka Haru, Society for Positive Action, and I just urge a no vote. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jane Williams, California Communities Against Toxics. The one thing I want to point out about the bill is the process inside the bill, where the public gets 15 days to take a look at whether a project should be in this train or not. It seems like if we're looking for expanding government oversight and public oversight of large projects, this bill goes the opposite way. So we obviously have many other concerns as well, which we discussed late last night. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other witnesses in opposition? Members, we went a little long on the opposition witnesses, but I wanted to make sure everybody had a chance to talk. So I'm going to open it up again to see, are there any other witnesses in support? Anyone else in support? If you're in support, I'm going to ask you to line up right now, and if you, because we need to get it straight where we are.
Mr. Chairman and members, Scott.
One moment, please. All right. Are there any other witnesses in support? All right. We're going to have these two more witnesses, and we're going to ask them to be brief, and then I think we're done with witnesses.
Mr. Chairman and members, Scott Wetch on behalf of the California State Association of Electrical Workers, the California State Pipe Trades Council, and the Western States Council of Sheet Metal Workers. No strangers to this committee on CEQA. We have, last night I went back to the office and I opened my files on CEQA bills, and I found 47 bills in the last 6 years that we've opposed trying to change CEQA. And we have always been adamant protectors of CEQA. And so we looked at this bill long and hard, and given all the other pressures that are brought to bear on the economy and on CEQA, we feel that this is a very, very reasonable approach. And in the final analysis, in the very final analysis, is we trust Governor Brown. We trust him to use this judiciously. We trust him to use this to ensure that it produces good, solid, high-paying jobs. And at the end of the day, as Democrats, I don't know how we can look at our Republican friends and ask them to trust our governor in the next budget deal and the budget deal after this, if we can't take the step to give him this authority and say, for 2 years, we entrust you with this and, do the right thing. And so we urge and I vote. Thank you.
Next witness.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. I apologize for being late at another committee hearing. My name is Marvin Kropke. I'm business manager of International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers Local Union 11 and represent those 8,000 members and electrical workers across the state. We are in strong support of this bill.
Any other witnesses in support or opposition at this time? All right, thank you. Let's bring it back to the committee then, and to the committee and to the authors, rather. Just a quick clarification on one point that was raised. The question was, are we talking private or are we talking private and public? I'm looking at the language on page 4, line 29 of the bill, which says, for the purpose of this chapter, the following terms shall have the following meanings. Line 29, applicant means a public or private entity or its affiliates, so on and so forth. I'm assuming that means public or private.
Yes, it does. Clear meaning.
If I might further clarify, if you look on that same page, Mr. Chair, starting at line 8, there's language there that says the project does not require taxpayer financing. It doesn't say it doesn't preclude it. So these are public, could be public-private partnerships.
All right.
I would like more clarification on that. I'm sorry. The whole sentence reads, these projects are privately financed or financed from revenues generated from the project themselves, by the projects themselves, I suppose, and do not require taxpayer financing. That's what it says.
What line are you at?
I'm on line 10.
And
9 and 10.
I'm going to ask the...
on page 4. That was also a discussion that we had last night in connection with the stadium project. That it didn't require
findings and declarations.
Or that it had
They don't have any legal
public
requirement,
financing.
right?
No, and that could be...
Yeah. Let me just say to the authors, looking at the line 8 that was referenced,
and 9 and 10.
And 9 and 10. I think you have to go back to the fact these are findings and declarations. So if you go to page 3 on line 7, it says legislature finds and declares all of the following. And so I take that to mean that under the findings and declarations, this is essentially a description of the various kinds of projects.
It is.
Yes.
It is. It's the statute itself speaks to projects that are publicly or privately financed. The findings themselves, which are non-binding, have a bit of a broader description.
All right. Let me.
Okay, could you tell us what lines were on that to the actual text of that bill.
The language that I was looking at, Senator, was on line 29, and which is line 27 is part of the text. Those are the definitions. It says, for the purposes of this chapter, the following term shall have the following meaning. So it's at line 27, and then at line 29, there's an indication of what the definition of an applicant is.
I understand.
That being said, let me, on this point, Senator Hancock, and to follow up, if I may, let me make a suggestion after I verify my understanding. I believe that if there is a due pass motion today, it will be a due pass to appropriations. And I also believe that appropriations has the ability to amend in appropriations if the authors are willing to accept amendments. Do I have my facts straight on this? All right. So if there is... So hold that thought.
Okay.
So if there is a desire and a willingness on the part of the authors to clarify their intention on the issue of private versus public, some wordsmithing might take place there. And I think the starting point, we're going to give this senator a moment to chat with his staff, but I think the starting point is to say, can we just be very clear about what it is the intention of the bill is?
I believe the intention in the bill refers to the line 29 on page 4.
Let me ask the question this way. I'm going to characterize $100 million as a mega project. I suppose to the truly rich that's not a mega project, but to me at least it's a mega project. So I'm going to call it a mega project. My understanding is your goal here is to provide an opportunity for mega projects that meet certain criteria to have expedited review. That's a very short and overly simplistic summary of a very complicated set of issues. So then the question is, do we want that to apply to public and private ventures? My reading of the bill is that that is your intention.
That is the intent.
Okay. All right. And then you've got essentially, I think, the way the bill is constructed, there is a requirement that in order to be an environmental leadership development project, that a project must be one of the following. And then later on in the bill, there is a set of criteria that the governor is obliged to follow for certification, and in that case, it is all of the conditions. So I think part of the struggle here, just in terms of wrapping your head around it, if you haven't spent time with the language, is in one place we're saying you have to be one of these things, and then we go to a different approach, which is to say, for certification by the governor, you have to be all of these things.
That's right.
I have my suggestion, and I'll ask this of the authors, and I don't want to cut off the committee, but happy to keep going. Would you be willing to look at clarifying amendments in the Appropriations Committee on this point, and would you be willing to consider a letter to the Journal, since the Journal is a place where we can clarify legislation?
I think,
as well?
May I would prefer, Mr. Chair, the letter to the Journal approach. Again, there may require, I think, some minor cleanup legislation on a couple of these points, which I and the authors will commit to as the first course of action in January. The issue here is this. The reason why we want to get this done now and at least establish the framework is because we don't want to lose the time between now and the beginning of the session, and if it's a majority vote effort, potentially a year and 3-month delay, before we provide this opportunity, and you said it very well, Mr. Chairman, not requirement, but opportunity for those who want to strive, frankly, to meet a higher level than what would otherwise be required under the CEQA law. That's the irony here. This goes above what CEQA requires in order to gain the original appellate jurisdiction. I think the best way to handle it is a letter to the Journal, and my commitment to clean up any of the minor pieces here as the first act in January.
And let me just, before I go to Senator Blakesley, And a letter to the Journal is something that the Assembly authors would be comfortable with as well.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
I'm just not clear a letter to the Journal resolves a contradiction in the language. And I'm concerned that under line 8 it says explicitly it must be private only. It's not either or. It must be, and if I'm reading through line 29 through 32, it says it must be public works only.
Senator, we're going to spend a moment now to parse the language together, if you will. The line 8 that you're referencing, I believe, is on page 4, yes?
Yes, it's the language we were talking about a few minutes ago.
And the language in line 8 is intent language, and the language in line 8 is part of a flow of description. So what it says above that in paragraph D beginning on line 3 is that there are large projects under construction in various regions of the state that would replace old and outmoded facilities with new job-creating facilities to meet those regions' needs while also establishing new cutting-edge environmental benefits to the regions. This is what in law school we refer to as puffery. It then goes on to say, these projects are privately financed or financed from revenues generated from the projects themselves and do not require taxpayer financing. So this is a description of the kinds of projects that are being discussed that are among those that are concerned. But nowhere in that language does it say they have to be private.
I guess my concern, Chair, is, this bill is not cooked. It was slapdash together last night. We received analysis at 3:30 in the morning. Before we've asked a substantive question about the policy, we've identified contradictions. We're contemplating the possibility of amendments, and I'm hearing that amendments are not welcome, and it's the bill as is, and we're going to write a letter to the Journal. And I'm just trying to clarify before we continue with the more substantive discussion, are we here to hear the bill and propose amendments and operate in our capacity as legislators, or are we here simply to rubber stamp what was cooked last night?
Senator Blakeslee, I believe you heard me ask the authors just a moment ago if they were prepared to take amendments. So I think in terms of our committee's purpose in being here, that's a clear indication of my view as chair that the committee is here to try and make sure that the bill, if and when it moves out of committee and if and when it moves out of the the Senate Appropriations Committee, is the best possible product it can be, given the late hour, which I also find challenging.
Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Strickland.
I want to kind of refocus this discussion. First and foremost, I believe you said, Chair, that we can do amendments and we can do amendments in appropriations. So this committee should suggest amendments moving forward. But let's look at the overall strategy. We have a wide variety of philosophies here. But, what I look at here is we're in a crisis situation in California. We have the second highest unemployment rate in the nation. And if we do nothing, okay, we do nothing. But moving forward on this, it gives an opportunity for big projects to bring jobs, much-needed jobs to California. And I was very supportive of the bill last night for that very reason, because we are in a crisis situation. I think Democrats and Republicans need to come together and bring jobs to California as soon as possible. I do have some suggestions in terms of the LEED certification. I think we've heard a lot of testimony here, that LEED is after the fact instead of ahead of time. And so I just don't think that language works. I think you should go to a Cal Green kind of code, because LEED comes in after the fact, not before, and we're trying to give these opportunities before we start. That's one. Another suggestion that I have is, instead of empowering just a governor to move forward in one individual, I think it would be better in terms of an agency, something like Business and Transportation and Housing Agency. Instead of the governor pulling the trigger, I think you should have an agency that pulls the trigger. That's a suggestion. The other issue, what was it? Oh yeah, no, and the one I talked to you, Senator Steinberg, about some of the testimony up here, but current renewable energy projects. One of the projects that was mentioned was the Comcast NBC. if we want to bring jobs today, right now, I encourage you to open up and amend that, because what we're trying to do is what we talked about last night with AEG, is bringing those 23,000 jobs. If we open it up in terms of a facility in Burbank, that's more jobs. It gets people working and gets us back, because I believe the only way we get out of this budget mess is by creating jobs, and I think that amendment will help facilitate. A lot of the testimony here from a lot of folks are talking about their union not having 40-50% unemployment. Why wouldn't we include projects like the Comcast NBC?
May I respond to that?
Please.
Look, I'm not only open to, I'm for trying to give this sort of expedited process as widely, as broadly as possible. The concerns you just expressed, Senator Strickland, and some of the witnesses, is that the bill isn't doing enough. We have others who are saying this is far too rapid of an expansion. And so, as usual, you get kind of stuck in the middle here. And I would rather do something significant and then come back to this question in January and look at the technical cleanup issues that need to be looked at, and also consider the kind of questions that you raised. I'm not adverse to it at all. I just think we need this late hour. What I worry about, you begin opening up this up to a bunch of amendments. We're going to lose a window created by the AEG project, by the way, which I support, to try to end this session with another jolt of confidence and something that people can begin looking at trying to use to create jobs sooner rather than later.
Let me just interrupt. Members, please, for one moment, please. Let me just say, the chair would be opposed to essentially allowing a group of folks to say, gee, this looks like a great opportunity. Let's jump on it after the fact. The fundamental premise of the bill, as articulated by all three of the authors, and in fact by many of the witnesses in support, is we're trying to jumpstart the economy. We're trying to create an incentive. By providing a certain kind of certainty about litigation, we hope to entice people into job creation in California. Then you've got some folks who come up as witnesses and who understandably say, well, we're already underway, and of course we haven't already done all the things that are the necessary prerequisites to qualify because we're already underway, but now we'd like to take advantage of the same protection. That, in my view, is fundamentally inconsistent with the premise of the bill, and that's something the chair would oppose. Senator Strickland.
And I open with, we might have different opinions or views on that.
That has happened from time to time.
Yeah, it does happen from time to time. Again, Senator Steinberg, I think, all in all, I'm supportive. I do think, and I will vote for this, but I think as we move to appropriations, you need to take a look at that LEED certified. I mean, you really do, because I don't think it works.
Can I respond to that one?
Please.
Because, first of all, LEED Silver is 2 rungs below the actual highest certification, which is platinum. It is a relatively low standard. It is used by most green developers, and it is not unprecedented for California statute to include reference to code that has been developed by outside entities. Take the Uniform Building Code, largely developed by plumbers and the other trades. And so, again, this is aspirational. It's not a requirement. You don't, obviously, it would be a tortured reading of the statute to say that you have to actually build the project silver before you get the relief. You have to promise that that's what you are going to do. And so,
okay, if you promise that's what you're going to do, because my understanding from the testimony here is leads towards the end of the project. If you promise and they fail to meet that requirement on LEED, what retribution is? That's why I'm saying it's after the fact instead of before, and that's why I think you should take a look, at least take a look as you go to appropriations.
2 possibilities, if I can try
please.
and find a little common ground here. One possibility is that the language could indicate that the project was designed to be LEED certified. And that's a semantic approach. There are some folks who want to go to Cal Green, and frankly, and again, I mean no disrespect, but let's call it what it is. There are some folks whose products and whose approach is more likely to get them certification with Cal Green, and there are other folks who prefer LEED, and that's why we're having the debate. It's not just the semantic and the timing issue. If there is an interest in pursuing Cal Green, the recommendation I would make is that we talk about Cal Green Level 2, which is a real and meaningful level lower, and someone said they thought that was something that was doable, but let's not go to Cal Green at a level that really is nothing more than an attempt to diminish the seriousness of that requirement in the bill.
And again, and I don't want to go to Cal Green 5, 6, 4, 3, 2, or 1 today, because I think, again, whether you agree with LEED Silver or not, it's aspirational, it's not a requirement, and we can deal with this certification question in January, and I will, because I want the bill to work.
Presumably, if there is I think you're going to continue to have some members who are troubled by the notion of clarifying all this in a letter to the Journal. But if there is a letter to the Journal, would you commit to clarifying that the notion with respect to the LEED Silver level is that the project is designed to be LEED Silver, and clarify that obviously there's no expectation of achieving a certification before the project?
Well, obviously, yes.
These things may seem obvious to us here in the room, but they are the stuff of great debate after the bills are passed.
Yes.
Chair, I'm still troubled because although the rhetoric was, yes, we're open to amendments, my colleague has suggested, I think, at least 3 very thoughtful amendments that promote the purpose of the bill, and has been rebuffed, I believe, in every instance. And the response has been that we don't want to open it up to a bunch of amendments. And something as fundamental, not as is this bill too little or too much, but would it work at all if you need to be LEED certified, but that certification cannot happen until the entire process is completed, seems to be a bit more than a letter to the Journal. And I think it's very important that after a year of talking about CEQA reform, we're sitting here right now and witnesses in support of this legislation remark that this is not all that extraordinary and say that it doesn't do that much. Well, I would agree. It's not doing that much if it doesn't work. And I would encourage the author to be open to amendments rather than letters to the Journal.
I need to respond, okay? Senator Blakesley, you're, I think, respectfully missing the process point of what the bill requires, which is that no project can be approved unless the governor certifies a project as eligible, and then the Joint Legislative Budget Committee has the legal authority to concur or non-concur in the governor's determination. These criteria are intended to be real but generalized as well. And what we want is for the governor to look at good projects and to simply say that if it's going to help get people back to work, litigation will occur in the appellate court. There's no harm here, in other words. You're speaking to some harm. There's no harm at all. And so it's appropriate for us to clarify and clean up, if necessary, some of these issues. But if I remember Senator Kuehl chairing the Health Committee, her sign, "First, do no harm." This is an opportunity. It ought to be seen as such, and we ought to pass it now.
And just again to follow up, I am supportive. I'm just suggesting some of these amendments because I think it will be helpful to the overall goal. I mean, the overall goal of doing this is to create the jobs, and I believe that's everybody's goal here, and that's why we're doing this and offering that opportunity. And again, Senator, I'll follow up with you. I do wish to hope to work with you because we have the NBC Universal, that will create more jobs. There's a lot of testimony from folks, and I believe the way we get this budget resolved is by creating jobs and putting people back to work. So I'm looking forward to working with you on those suggestions.
Other comments or questions from members of the committee? Senator Pavlik and then Senator Lowenthal.
Yes, and I wanted to say quite a few things. And first of all, just for the record, this whole discussion is not a choice between the environment and jobs. I mean, we know the creation of so much of the unemployment was the lack of regulation, banking and mortgage. And that's where the construction industry failed and everything like that. I voted for the stadium project yesterday. Why? Because you could sort of get your hands on it. It was one project with the lead agency. You understood exactly what was involved. I sort of reviewed that as a pilot program of expedited review. Full sort of buy-in from the community. The LA City Council was directly involved. That was a project you could sort of understand. A stadium and a convention center, urban infill, traffic mitigation. Yes, there needs to be some continued work, but I trust the lead agency, LA City, to mitigate all the environmental impacts on that particular project. This is different, and I have some issues, and I know Senate Pro Tem Steinberg and the two authors, who I all have a great deal of respect for. I just wanted to have a little bit of a discussion here. If amendments can't be taken for appropriations, that's potentially a problem, and I understand part of the problem is this is the last day of session, to be thoughtful in how we go about that.
Senator, let me interrupt and ask a blunt question of the folks who are here, because given the time, we need to cut chase. It seems to me there are two reasons why the folks might be reluctant to take amendments. The first is the sheer challenge of time and drafting, given the end of the day being not that far away. The second is that once you open up to amendments, everybody and their uncle suddenly thinks that they deserve a piece of your bill. Is that what we're talking about here?
It's the uncles we're worried about, yes.
All right, okay. Then I think, and all of us have expressed our views about that, and we clearly have different points of view about the extent to which it's appropriate. I'm just going to say out loud what I'm thinking, which is I'm thinking that if there are narrow and technical and clarifying amendments, that those are a little more likely for consideration than if there are larger substantive loophole-creating amendments. So narrow and technical may be more doable and more something the folks who are authoring the bills may be more amenable to. But I apologize for the interruption, ma'am.
No apology necessary. So I know this would be perhaps something that the authors and the pro tem wouldn't support, but I don't see the harm in having a real thorough informational hearings in the fall with the understanding that this will be approved in some form that can go into effect by January 1st, 2012. We don't lose the timeline. I'm not for delaying another year or thing. I appreciate the fact that there could be some strategies to jumpstart an economy. But looking at the bill, some of the issues I have, for example, why would the Environmental Quality Committee give up jurisdiction? Why is the Joint Legislative Budget Committee reviewing which projects are there? I think we're having the discussion. We're engaged in it. It's the jurisdiction of this committee. We're talking about expedited CEQA review. Why is it the Budget Committee? That's number one. I think they got the wrong committee here. I am concerned that the governor, whatever governor, but it's Governor Brown for the next 2 years because it's a two-year program, that there's no sort of judicial review process on which projects are picked, and the narrow window of a 15-day public review. That is 2 weeks. That is rather narrow. I was sort of intrigued with the discussion, frankly, of those projects who already had the draft EIR, as opposed to new ones not even yet started in the process. If we're serious about, because of the length of, you still have to go through an environmental impact report, and we're talking about just the expedited review of the and cutting down all the different levels of judicial review, that expedited. Why aren't we just looking at the people that already have a draft ER? And I want to let you know just then why I'm thinking that way. One, you could get a handle on how many projects are out there. I've gotten a lot of concerns and letters coming in as people are finding out we're considering this. We just don't know what we're talking about. How many? Is it hundreds? Is it thousands? How many fit in the $100 million threshold? And how do you determine $100 million? So I just thought that was an intriguing, different approach as far as accelerating the judicial review process of projects that are real projects that are already thoughtfully in the pipeline. So I don't mean to be complicating the situation. I'm trying to really feel really comfortable on what I'm voting for, and I'm not there yet.
No, complicating or not, there's no arguing that this is a significant piece of legislation, and the reason we're having the hearing is to tease all these issues out. I will just go back to this issue of the folks who are already underway with respect to the draft EIR. I'm going to paraphrase both what we heard today, members, and what we heard last night on the single site project on this issue of community engagement and involvement. There is already an argument that it is difficult and that it is less than a level playing field for community groups and environmental groups and opponents to essentially discover that they have to do all of their work, the very challenging work of responding to a project on a shortened time frame. That is, and I think that's a legitimate argument and an understandable concern. If we now say that we're going to apply this process to folks who've already started and are at the draft EIR stage, then effectively what we're saying to those same community groups and would-be opponents is we're changing the rules on you in the middle of the process, and we didn't give you notice of the fact that that's why the stadium's in a one-off bill. I'm not inclined to say for any and all unknown number of projects around the state that everybody who thought they knew what the rules of the game were and thought they had a fair understanding of the process by which they could contest a project if they chose to do so, that not only are we shortening that process, but we're going to shorten that process after we told them that a different process altogether was going to be accessible to them. That would be troubling in my view. So, back to you, Senator Lowenthal. Thank you for your patience, sir.
Well, I have found this morning's committee meeting fascinating and illuminating. And I think everyone is, I think I'm going to go back to something that Senator Strickland began with. We are in an economic crisis. You are to be commended. You are to be commended, all three of you, for the leadership in saying we are going to take a bold step, but it's a step with risks. And I think members of this group are saying we are proud of you for taking this, but let's make sure we get everything out on the table, and we have to understand and appreciate what that process is for what you consider are minor. I consider maybe the most important kinds of changes that California ever will deal with, because we're not just talking about CEQA, we're talking about how we move projects forward in the state and what's that process and how I identify the most important ones and what's the role of the community and what's the standards we keep. And so I don't want to go through listing all of them again, but I think it needs a lot of work yet because it's so important. And these are not just minor changes. I can just list some, and then I'll get back. I think this discussion about where in the crisis that we're facing is we've got to get California moving in the next 2 years. Yet, as people said, if you're doing that, then you have to deal with projects that are already out there, or else you're not dealing with the problem that you said. I'm not saying that's the solution, but I'm just saying that is, if we're, as was pointed out by Senator Blakesley, we want solutions. We have to at least address that issue openly and discuss it. Even though, as Senator Simitian has pointed out, there is real conflict. We change the rules on people. That is really not a fair thing, which leads me to the second point. The role of the community must be elevated in this process. Clearly, these are not minor changes when people, like in my district, the tremendous changes and the new green technologies that have occurred in terms of goods movement are due to the environmental justice people in this room who took that time. We're talking about the China shipping decision. We're talking about the whole change in culture. So to think that on projects, as we ask them to sacrifice, as we should ask everybody to make that move, some sacrifice at this moment to stretch, because we are in a tremendous crisis. We can't disregard them, and whatever input in terms of how long they have to challenge, all of the processes, these are not minor. They have to be at the table before we finish this. This is because they're the ones that got us here in many ways. The other things that the process, we have to, more than I think what Senator Pavley, I think there's got to be a working group also, no matter what you decide today to move forward or not in the next bill. And it has to include a lot of people who feel disenfranchised, who've been at the table fighting for environmental issues, both environmental justice and the environment. They have to participate in the cleanup. They have to do that. And the business community and the people who have already raised it. So I understand the tremendous urgency because the nation and the state needs it. But we've got to do it right, and I have real concerns that there's a lot of things that need to be fixed in this for us all to hold hands. This is not a minor bill. This is not, we're not talking about ultimately minor changes. We're talking about trusting each other and moving forward and making major changes in how we do business. Everybody's got to be at the table, and I don't think they are yet. And I applaud you. Maybe we move this forward, but your thinking about how we go to the next step has to be really clarified and told to this community. It's not just minor changes.
May I, Mr. Chairman, respond to that? Because I think it's fundamental, and I appreciate your thoughtful approach. As always, Senator Lowenthal. Here's what I want to commit. By next week, I will put a bill, a second bill, into preprint. And I will convene a working group, and I'd invite any member of this committee, of course led by the chairman, to take the lead role, with all your spare time, to take the lead role in convening the very stakeholders that you described. I think that is maybe the imperfect but best way
I don't know what the perfect
that we can move forward today and create that jolt of confidence. At the same time, we deal with some of these issues, and that's what I would commit to you today.
As long as the issues I've mentioned these are not minor. These are wonderful issues. Don't get me wrong, and they're very difficult for us all to come to grips with. And
right.
We're all going to have to give, but these are fundamental issues.
I heard Senator Simitian and Senator Pavley disagree on this
and I disagreed
mission
also.
Of existing projects, and so this is something that needs to be thought through.
Timelines, the framework that people have, the ability for them to engage in that litigation. We've shortened it. These are major decisions, and I think they're fundamental for us to deal with, but we cannot just dismiss them.
Let me go to Assemblymember Buchanan and then to Senator Hancock, who has questions and comments.
Well, maybe we should let Senator Hancock speak, and then
Senator Hancock.
Thank you. I've also found this. It's a very interesting, it's troubling discussion because it is weighing goods and weighing dangers. And let me say, I do not regard CEQA as a problem. I think it is a process that has worked very well. It has produced many stadiums, many cultural centers, many factories. I am interested in the incentive approach that's in this bill. For a long time, I felt that to kickstart projects, we should look at ways of incentivizing what we want. And what I like about this approach is that it seems to me if the definitions are carefully followed, we are essentially kickstarting the kind of project that we want to have be the basis of the California economy. And I know that at least with alternative energy financing, it's often difficult for projects to find financing. And if they were of sufficient magnitude, I think that it would be a real help if they meet all these other criteria. if we could help with this. Having said that, I have many, many problems with this bill. It's a major change, and I would just like to ask the authors if they've thought about certain things that are that I think could be fixed in some way, and I think they could be fixed today, actually, in appropriations. What will we do for small environmental groups that don't have lobbyists or lawyers? Now, we have a habeas corpus organization that provides legal help to people who can't afford a lawyer on death row. We have public defenders' offices. There are private organizations like Earth Justice and others that I have seen honestly be heroes for local environmental groups that were at the mercy of large corporations that were not following CEQA. Have the authors thought about the expedited timeline and what that would do for these groups? I share Senator Pavley's interest in finding out what about projects that are in the pipeline if they meet all the criteria. It would accelerate job creation. I agree with whoever said that it should be the Environmental Quality Committee that would review the governor's certification. I think it would put more expertise in committee staff that are experts in this area. Predominantly, though, I think that if this moves forward, I personally would like it, and I've discussed it with the pro tem. I know he's not amenable to it. I think it should be a pilot project where after 5 projects, we would evaluate outcomes. If that is not possible, I think the bill should include an evaluation after 5 projects have been certified and are moving forward. An opportunity for a public hearing to review what the projects are and what the experience of both the business community, the labor community, and the environmental community has been. Really prevailing wage, really green building, really environmental justice. Does it work for people? A major work like this has to be seen as an action evaluation, as I keep saying in Budget Committee. Yes, we're going to have to go back, but we need a public opportunity early on to test.
Senator Hancock, on that score, let me make a suggestion, just as I've committed to Senator Lowenthal that we'll put a cleanup in preprint and use that to continue the work here. I will commit to you that after 5 projects with the authority I have, limited though it may be, I will seek an audit from our own Auditor General, and I will also seek, if appropriate, our legislative analyst, and maybe a combination of the two, to do just that, an evaluation of the first 5 projects out the gate. So we can essentially, I can commit to you that we will do that.
Okay, and I do think a working group should be convened, and honestly, I commit myself, and I think many others of us will. We need local working groups where we work through this with the people who live with the issues every day.
Senator Lowenthal.
Yeah, I have just a question now for all 3. If we let's say we move forward now, you put into preprint, and there are lots of issues on, how do we define the scope? So, for example, Senator Simitian said, well, there'll be a lot of uncles that are going to, well, we may not have those uncles now, but this may be a family feast. We may want those uncles later on. And the reason I'm saying is, if this is truly a jobs bill, and it is in part a jobs bill, maybe the most a jobs bill that builds upon California's strengths, I'm not sure you've already identified the key California businesses or infrastructure that we truly need for California.
We'll be inclusive, and we need your help.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Members, let me offer a couple of comments and then see if we're prepared to take up a motion. I want to, without belaboring the point, I want to sort of reiterate some comments I made last night on a project-specific bill. in my role as chair of this committee and as a member of the committee over the last 5 years, we've seen what I thought were some rather clearly inappropriate efforts to roll back CEQA protections. If this were, as we have seen in the past, an exemption from CEQA, I couldn't and wouldn't support it. That's not what the bill is. If it were an effort to say, you know what, we're simply going to give some number of projects a free pass, and no matter how wide of the mark they may be, they're exempt from litigation, which is the proposal we had from the previous administration, I couldn't and wouldn't support it. What we have instead is a measure that says CEQA applies fully. All of the CEQA issues can be litigated fully, but we're going to incentivize the best possible practices by telling folks who achieve those best possible practices or engage in those best possible practices that they are eligible for an expedited review so that the project is not unduly delayed by litigation or the threat of litigation. That's the bill. That's the premise. Is it complicated? I think this morning's discussion suggests it is. But that's the fundamental premise of the bill, and it's a premise I can support. I can support it because, as I said last night, it's not that the, quote, problem is with CEQA. The problem is that the mere threat of litigation from an opponent can be enough to force a project applicant to either submit or surrender. And that's what we're trying to avoid, I think, through this effort. So I'm prepared to support the bill and hope we'll have a due pass motion in a moment. I think we have a commitment from the authors, plural, to do a letter to the Journal clarifying language to the extent that that's possible. We clearly have a commitment as well to see a bill in preprint and to take up these additional issues and to convene a working group to that effect. I want to remind colleagues that there is, in fact, already in the bill a January 1st, 2015 sunset. So this is a pilot project writ large, perhaps, but one that does have a sunset date, as well as a requirement in the bill already for an analysis by the Judicial Council on the impact of the legislation. And Senator Steinberg has committed, and I believe his co-authors have committed as well, to take a look after 5 projects have already made their way through the system. I do want to say, just because Senator Hancock, on the one hand, on the other hand, I've had 2 or 3 of my colleagues now who are interested in looking at these draft EIRs. On the one hand, Senator Hancock, you expressed an interest in having a narrower look-see in way of a pilot project. We open it up to everybody who's got a draft EIR. We're going in exactly the opposite direction. And you spoke very eloquently, Senator, about the importance of the role of local community members. If we suddenly say change the rules in the middle of the game, all of those local community members are the ones who are specifically going to be disadvantaged. So we don't have to solve that today. I look forward to letting the authors work some of those issues through in their preprint and their working group, but I wanted to leave that comment on the table. Yes, Assembly Member.
I'd just like to make a few closing comments because...
Can I just make one little clarification? Sure. I appreciate your trying to recapture the discussion, Senator Samiti, and I just think for the record it would be good if you could very clearly say that the authors do agree to do an audit, an evaluation after 5 projects, and that we will hold hearings on that. That is very important.
You've said it well. You've said it crisply. I concur, and more importantly, the authors are all going to say, yes, that's what we committed to.
I think I already did.
Okay, yes,
Absolutely.
That's what we committed to. Great.
I didn't hear him repeat your
thank
words.
you. No, that's helpful. And you were about to say.
I'd like just to make a few closing comments because I have a lifetime membership to the Sierra Club. I donate to Planning and Conservation League. I consider myself an environmentalist. I believe we have to be good stewards, and there's nothing that's more important that we do. At the same time, I live in a county, Contra Costa, where 4 years ago the unemployment rate was significantly lower, but 40% of the jobs were construction jobs. And if you take a look at where we are today, we have people that are some who have lost their homes, others who are struggling to keep them, people who are struggling to pay their rent or make their house payments or put food on the table. So, and I'm a member who did not vote for the City of Industry Stadium project because it basically, waived the process instead of respecting the process. And after that vote, I took a look at, where we are, because when you're in an environment where you have 12% unemployment, if you come to the legislature and you say, are we going to approve a project and put tens of thousands of people back to work, or stick with a long, review process, I think inevitably we have to admit that putting people back to work is going to win. So the question then becomes, is there a way we can compromise and accomplish both goals? And I think the stadium project yesterday was one of those compromises because it holds the project to very high standards, very high environmental standards. And I think this bill does the same. And what's remarkable to me when I listen to those who are supporting or supportive amended, opposed if amended, and all of you talk today, was I think we have more in common than we have differences. I do agree that there's more that needs to be done. When I listen to all of you, and I've taken several pages of notes, I think we all have agreement that we need to clarify what we mean by LEED certification, whether we go to Cal Green 2 or clarify that it should be designed to LEED Silver standards. We need that clarification. We need to clarify that it applies to public and privately financed. We need a discussion about the project date. Because, if our goal is to get people back to work, we need to ask ourselves, should we be looking at this date a little bit differently? But I'm hearing this from Republican and Democratic colleagues, and that we need to take a look at, should this apply to other energy projects? But as you hear yourselves talking about this, it's not an easy discussion. So I'm willing to, to not only support everything that Senator Steinberg has offered, I'm willing to offer as of next week to be able to make trips up here, start to have meetings with everyone so we can come to consensus and really come out and get a bill passed immediately. Hopefully pass it even with a 54-vote majority and get it into effect immediately. But as many of us say, we can let the perfect get in the way of the good. And this is a bill that says if you are willing to commit to high environmental standards, we're willing to help you have an expedited review process. And I hope all of us can work together. I hope we can get the bill passed and, take one more step forward. I wish there were more time, but I was here, last year when many of our bills died, at the stroke of midnight, and I don't think we want that to happen today.
May I take that as a close from all three of the members?
Yes, you may. Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry to be late. May I ask? Thank you. Governance and Finance was also hearing another important bill, so I apologize for being late. Just a couple of things. How does this bill impact the Coastal Zone and the Coastal Act? Will there be any conflicts? I don't know if that was brought up.
I don't believe so. There's no diminution at all of the Coastal Act and the Coastal Commission's full regulatory authority to review coastal projects.
And then also, it specifically calls out wind and solar in the green investment portion. Is it limited to only those two technologies? Algae fuels or
talked about
thermal things
third
like
category is clean manufacturing, so I suppose that these other technologies could fall under those auspices.
All right. Thanks for the clarification.
We're going to have a working group to deal with that very issue.
Yeah.
The green investment.
Everything. The senator has proposed. All three have proposed that there's a lot of things that need to be clear. The role of the community, the scope, the when, in fact, in the environmental process. There are a lot of questions raised by the issue, including what might be included or not included. And he'll put into print next week, beginning of a cleanup bill that will be dealt with in January. We will develop a working group and have a working group of working of the community of the most affected people here to try to come up with, in January, a consensus bill that really helps to implement this. This is a framework, and we're going to do the implementation in January.
Thank you.
Can I, Mr. Chairman, I just want to thank the chair and the committee staff for staying up until all hours of the night, I know, to finish this analysis. I know that's great personal sacrifice, and I just want to let you know how much, as your pro tem, I appreciate it.
Thank you. Senator Blakeslee, did you have one last comment?
I did have one last
Please.
comment. Thank you very much. You wanted to convey appreciation to the authors for their hard work. Clearly, this is not an easy subject. I do need to disclose that I'm not comfortable voting. I'm not sure what I'm voting on, candidly. It seems I'm voting on a working group, and I don't know who the members are. I don't know if the business community that's trying to create jobs is going to be in that working group, or if any of the members on this side of the aisle are going to be on the working group.
I'd
be happy to chair it for you. That'd be great. Thank you. Next.
Let's see how you vote.
We also are. We're also hearing that there's legislation that will be put into print shortly. Don't know what that legislation really is going to say or do, and if it has some of the same sorts of contradictions and elements that make it non-applicable that we've quickly teased forward in this conversation. I'm not sure that is a remedy. I fundamentally am deeply concerned that we're here on the last day of this year on such an important issue when the GOP5 worked all year long on reforms and stepped up and was willing to do some very difficult things to have a bipartisan agreement. And instead of having any kind of substantive or long-lasting CEQA reform, it's been very clear in this conversation. This is not CEQA reform. That has been stated repeatedly by virtually everyone in this room. This is something else. And I'm also concerned, frankly, that, again, notwithstanding the good intentions of the authors, which, again, I praise and actually want to commend you again for your hard work, I'm not sure the bill even works in a real world, given some of the issues that have been raised. So I'll be voting no, but excited to see what the amendments are that are going to be coming out of approach, because I did hear that the authors were open to amendments.
No, we're not taking amendments in approach.
Okay, a little clarification
you
there.
heard that wrong.
Okay.
We're not going
Maybe the chair said that.
We committed to a process here that was articulated by Senator Lowenthal.
Senator?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
It's all good.
Okay.
Senator Pavlik.
Just one question. One of my top priorities was the jurisdiction of the committee. Needed to hear a response by
Senator Steinberg and assembly members. Ms. Pavley indicates that one of her concerns is the jurisdiction of the committee in terms of review. I inferred from the comments that I heard earlier that would be the subject of deliberation in the working group.
It can be, sure, it can be the deliberation. I think,
Senator Pavley, let me ask this. Can we get a commitment that that issue will be looked at in the working group?
Yes, it will.
Yes. Okay. Senator Pavley, does that answer your question? Thank you. All right.
That seems to me to be a rather important but technical issue. It would seem to me that perhaps that would be a change that could be made in appropriations.
Senator Hancock, I'm not sure I agree with Senator Pavley. I think I'm open to it, but I'm not sure I agree. I'm not sure it is the proper purview of a full policy committee. And then what are you talking about, the comparable committee on the assembly side reviewing every project? I'm not sure that's right. The JLBC is set up as a committee that can work during interim, that can work all year round. It's frankly more efficient. Now, the environmental committees, the chair can certainly have great input because these are our colleagues as well. And so I'm not sure I agree with Senator Pavley on this question, but I'm open to it.
I have an open mind, colleagues, on the subject, but I do have to say the very first reaction I had was, do we really want to politicize project applications on an application-by-application basis in that way.
But Mr. Chair, on that note, and again, I'm supportive because of the overall goal of jobs. But on that note, we are doing that very thing by sending it to the governor. That's why my suggestion on the amendment moving forward is that we do the BTH committee or I think we do politicize it by sending it to the governor so the governor can pick and choose. On that note, again, supportive because of jobs, but I think that's something we need to take a look at.
And I would just like to add that it's wonderful when we all have the same concerns, but clearly it's why we need to resolve this in committee.
All right, then I'm looking for. Yes, ma'am.
I apologize for not having heard the discussion, but if we're talking about the legislature looking at draft EIRs, I would have some concerns and need to know more about that. That is the function of local government. We are not here to decide land use downtown in any downtown in the state. So I'll think about all that. We want safeguards, we want checks and balances, but that is the local jurisdiction for anybody who's ever been on a city council.
At this time, the chair would gratefully entertain a motion due pass to the Committee on Appropriations. I'm going to ask the secretary to repeat the motion and then call the roll.
The motion is due pass to appropriations. Senator Simitian.
Aye.
Simitian, aye. Strickland.
Aye.
Strickland, aye. Blakesley.
No.
Blakesley, no. Hancock.
Aye.
Hancock, aye. Kehoe.
Aye.
Kehoe, aye. Lowenthal.
Aye.
Lowenthal, aye. Pavley. 5-1.
There are no absent members, no reason to hold the roll open. The vote is 5-1 with one member not voting.
Thank you all
The measure passes without objection. The committee hearing is adjourned.